being both good and bad very abstract terms for a lot of people. And happiness itself being a very abstract term. There are various different degrees of happiness, and it does come down to our own expectations. If you expect to be happy by just like sitting here, like talking to like your neighbor or whatever, you could always get that. That will be always within your reach. I would like to offer a diagram on my definition of happiness. Maybe we could like talk about it, or if you guys don't want to, if I could come up and draw on the board.
Well, before I consider that, sorry, I because you came to play it, so maybe you haven't heard my elaboration on why I made this distinction even. Basically, you can think about your life in various relations to how happy you are or how sad you are, but that's irrelevant to the point. The point is, there are certain things that you can say, oh, if I had this, if I felt like that, my life would have been better. There are certain things that if I lost, or if I gained even in some cases, would make my life worse. So pretty much a distinction between a good life or a bad life is somehow related to these things. But of course, it's not necessarily that a good life is happy. Like Camus is a good example, even though some people might argue that it's not necessarily a good life.
The thing is that it probably would be better to simply talk about, is your life worthwhile? And what Camus says, only subjectively, not objectively. That's the key distinction. There's no objectively worthwhile life, but there can be subjective worthwhile lives, and probably many of them. In other words, there's not just one. All right?
Joe?
We each have to find our own way.
I just wanted to, a little while back, it was mentioned that the hedonism that you referred to as like identified with materials and Satanism. I don't think you're giving the theory that at least he presented enough credit, because it seems that or at least people enough credit for that matter, because that's assuming that people would, given this sort of concept, maximize good or good feeling, minimize bad feeling, would become sort of all drug addicts or something like that. Would start doing really bad things, where I feel like if you have, especially with a long-term structure of good and bad, and actually in the overall looking at that, I think people would actually live good lives trying to maximize their pleasure and minimize their pain in an overall holistic viewpoint. And
as long as the long term is part of the equation.
What would be a bad feeling? Like, would you say that happiness is a good feeling, and let's say sadness or anger is a bad feeling? Because that's what usually happens when, if you make the distinction between the observed and the observer, and you find yourself from the observer point of view, and say, anger doesn't really hit the observer itself, but anger is more like, there's this anger going on in your brain chemistry. So then you think there's a struggle, because you think, oh, I shouldn't be angry right now, but I'm angry and I don't let myself be angry. So why would you make a distinction about good feelings and bad feelings? Still,
I mean, that's just the
feelings just natural reactions in your brain. And if you make the distinction, then you may struggle. Oh, I feel jealous. I shouldn't feel jealous.
I was just gonna say I didn't make the distinction. I was just referring to.
Oh no, but I wanted to know what you thought of.
Well, I mean, I guess it would depend. Really, I mean, it seems that usually people identify hedonism with physically good feeling, like taking a bunch of opiates, and then with physical pain. I think it's interesting that if you were to take a bunch of opiates, you'd probably very soon feel a lot of physical pain, and end up miserable in the long run. So, I mean, I think it's probably really complex, and there's a lot going on with those two.
Of course.
Me?
Yes.
Oh, I was going to say that I think that, to, in a certain way, categorizing emotions as good and bad is, dangerous territory, because, they're only good or bad because we choose them to be. You know what I mean? Kind of what you're talking about. And so, in my own personal experience, you know what I mean, I very rarely feel the actual emotion of joy, yet I still consider myself happy. In other words, I'm most often in a depressive state, and yet, I mean, I have bipolar disease, so my brain chemistry works that way, and yet, you know, I find something beautiful about sadness. You know what I mean? About the act and the feeling of being sad. You know, or if you want to put it that way. You know what I mean? So therefore, the beauty makes a different form of happiness, but it's not a joyful feeling. You know what I mean?
But you refer to this as a subjective notion. Aren't emotions basically the manifestation of a subjective notion? It's basically, you define that, oh, I don't like this subjectively, or I like this subjectively, by basically following your emotions. So what stands behind emotions as a subjective evaluator of a situation, or even an emotion in that case? I could basically ask you that, well, I like, let's say, I like Matt because he's, because I feel good around him. Or I don't like Jesse because he pisses me off and stuff. But, yeah, I made those subjective evaluations using my emotions. But sadness kind of makes me happy, or sadness makes me content.
It may seem like
It's using emotions to
No, but we
evaluate emotions.
Not only do our emotions choose us, but we say, I'm going to do something that will make me feel this way, or I'm going to do something that will make me feel this way. If I want to feel happy, I'll hang out with the person who makes me feel happy. You know what I mean? And so we choose our emotions.
I was also thinking something that I feel the alternative theory of a good life, maybe more something happy life, a life through.
Do share.
It's hard to say, like knowledge or understanding or truth. I mean, I know like a lot of early Christians believed in reaching sort of the transcendent level through concept of knowledge, and I also think that there's a lot of like, for instance, you could say that you might lead a good or happy life because you can come to an understanding of your sadness, and it's really that understanding that's driving like you come and like you can behold it, and it's something that you can make sense of and sort of see into, and that is where you're deriving that sort of happiness. And it's sort of through the understanding and coming to terms with your world around you, the things that are happening around you, what's going on in your future, your past, that's what brings happiness.
You're talking about the Gnostics.
I did. Yeah.
Talking about Gnosticism. But it seems like, you know, everyone's had something to say about what they think a good life is, and they've given examples to back what they were saying up. But I think as a group, as a unit, you know, we ask ourselves, or we ask the question, what is a good life? I think we should all work together to try and answer that question. So you know, what is our aim? Our aim is to find out what is a good life. So let's figure out as a group, as a unit, what we define as a good life, and try to come up with a solution to what a good life is, rather than chaotically going around. Yeah, everyone's saying their thing. It's emotion. It's this. It's that. It's this and that. Let's come together and find a solution to the problem. What is a good life?
But you're not going to get one.
The problem is that it's a very, very particular and subjective notion of what a good life is. That's why I brought up the distinction between these various categories of people. But
I believe there is a solution to that problem.
But before I go any longer, I'll let Nate talk before his hands fall asleep.
No, I'll be good on that. Don't worry. I don't know if you brought this up because I was like 25 minutes late, but it kind of strikes me that perhaps, and I don't want to step on any existentialist toes.
Please, be my guest.
Better philosophers who wrote much earlier than I have not written. But a better word than happiness might be like satisfaction, because it's more neutral. I think regardless of how subjective emotions are, I think we all have like an objective notion of what happiness is. Like it kind of seemed like you were fumbling to try to explain. I understood exactly what you were saying, but you were kind of fumbling to explain like what you meant, you know. And I think a lot of that has to do with because we all have objective understandings of what it means, what sadness means, even though we might all experience it differently and so on and so forth. So, you know, to say like, you know, and I'm not sure if this, I believe this to be a truth, because I don't know if there really is a universal absolute quality of what the good life is for everybody, but let's just say, for the sake of argument, there is, that if it were something, I think it would be more likely to be satisfaction than happiness, because I could see satisfaction like something like what Joey was talking about, being able to fit into, you know, searching for truth and so on and so forth, being able to fit into satisfaction either than happiness. You know, I would be satisfied with finding a great truth that I was searching for more than, say, I might be happy because or joy.
Could I ask you a clarifying question? Do you include some kind of moral evaluation to that? In other words, would you be morally satisfied that you've done the right thing, for example, even if you had failed at your goal, for example, that you had tried? You could be satisfied maybe with having striven for something.
Maybe, if there was a moral implication, if I felt there was a moral implication to whatever my goal was.
I'm just saying that when I heard the word satisfaction, I thought it was somewhat ambivalent what you were getting at. So I was trying to make a distinction between the stuff that's kind of in your control and the stuff that's kind of out of your control. Because that's something we haven't really talked about, is how much of your happiness is in your control and how much is out of your control. And Kant says, hey, it's all out of your control except for your own moral worth. Make yourself deserving of being happy, and what? That's all you can do. Okay? Forget about happiness. You can't get it in this life.
Oh, but
instead of bringing up people as an example all the time, I really think that we should, as a unit, try to find a solution to this problem. Because I believe there is a solution to the problem. There is a solution, and it's not very complicated.
What's the solution?
oh,
I mean, I honestly, personally, I mean, in my, I would say, opinion, and from my own experience, I think happiness is a transcendental experience. It's transcendental, and I bring up that word a lot. But transcending, I mean, in Latin, it's a Latin word, means to overcome, transcendere, to overcome, or superare, to overcome. But transcending is experiencing an abstract, is experiencing a spiritual manifestation. You're going, like in the ancient times, for example, there were two concepts. There was the material and there was the spiritual. The material was considered evil, and the spiritual was considered good. And the material, you have in the material, you have the body and you have the soul. So when I say transcending, I mean transcending the body, which I mean transcending material, transcending material world. And when I mean by transcending material world, transcending the senses, which is going beyond the senses, or what you experience with the senses, sight, sounds, smell, taste, senses, and that there is a happiness beyond the senses. That there is a happiness, there's a transcendental experience beyond the senses, and it's abstract, and I believe that if you learn to transcend the material world or the material aspects, you know, you go beyond. You go. I'd like to use the word body, but I think of materiality. Does that make any sense? Am I making any sense?
It actually does. You're mostly emphasizing